Sie hören CIO Radio. Für alle, die Verantwortung für IT tragen. Ein Podcast der ACENT AG.
Willkommen zum CIO-Radio. Ich bin Nikolaus Zeitler. Die nächste Mobilfunkgeneration 6G könnte die Art, wie man in Unternehmen mit Daten umgeht, Entscheidungen trifft, Prozesse aufsetzt, grundsätzlich verändern. Das sagt Professor Art Langer von der Northeastern University. Er leitet dort das Center for Technology Management und Digital Leadership. Ich habe Art Langer zum Thema KI und 6G interviewt. Das Gespräch haben wir auf Englisch geführt. Wir sprechen unter anderem darüber, wann der neue Standard wirklich kommt, welche Vorteile Firmen daraus ziehen können, aber auch vor welche Herausforderungen 6G uns als Gesellschaft stellt. Viel Freude beim Hören.
Hi Art, great to have you here.
Hi, how are you? Glad to be with you.
Yeah, we are here today, Art, to take a look into the future. We will talk about AI in times of 6G. And as 6G is not yet there, let's start maybe with a quick overview on the status of 6G worldwide. It always says like commercial use is expected to start in the year 2030. Is this a realistic goal to you, and where do you expect the first applications?
The general consensus from the people that I'm dealing with is they would bet more on 2032.
Okay.
So certainly it is coming. I think they're being careful, but the actual date is 2030. But as it rolls out, they're telling me it's going to be closer to 2032. Is the better bet these days.
Okay. So this means it's kind of almost 7 or 8 years from now. Where do you still, or where do the people you talk to still see the main challenges to get it started?
Well, let me first just go back to 5G a little bit. Most of us that see 5G on our phones, we're not really getting the true 5G. And one of the things that's going to go on between now and 2030 or 2032, you never know, is that the big problem was really the number of telecom companies that were able to build the infrastructures out. And a lot of what's coming in 6G will have a lot, not only the new stuff, but a lot of the stuff that was supposed to be in 5G. And let's face it, COVID set it back, right? Because the stations weren't being built. My stats have shown that only 39 companies really came aboard and put in the true 5G infrastructure. So right now, even though that sounds like a long time, the idea is to get a lot of these companies now to start to build the infrastructure necessary. One of them is the technology itself. But what happened with 5G is that the infrastructure capabilities were not set in place fast enough because of the setbacks, I think, of COVID and just the physicality of being out there creating these IoT devices and areas and infrastructure that is necessary. So while we say that 6G is not going to be here, I think you're going to start seeing a much better 5G over the next few years as the infrastructure gets better and better and better. A lot of people call it the real 5G as it's starting to come out. But nevertheless, that was part of the real issue. So it's not giving up hope yet. Even though your phone flashes up 5G, beware, you may not really be getting a lot of the things that 5G can offer.
Okay, I see. Now, let's take a look, or let's step maybe in the year 2030 or 2032 when we have 6G. Will it then from beginning be the real 6G, or will it be like similar to the rollout of 5G?
I think 5G had some unique problems with COVID. There may be, here are the promises of 6G, a self-contained ecosystem of AI, ubiquitous AI, near instant and unrestricted wireless communication. They're calling it near real time. It'll be 100 times faster than the original 5G. I think these are real. Intelligent connected management and control functions. Maybe not all of them may be ready day one. There's a energy footprint in 6G. And then following, I do think maybe not all of them, and I think it will actually global standards. So I think that a lot of those things will be there. They may not be 100% fine-tuned, but I think very much those are the, it's integration of everything. Will that be the case on day one? I'm sure there'll be some problems. Trustworthy infrastructure, so everybody's going to be untrusted, right? Because you're going to have a lot of that kind of ability to cyber has to be much more intelligent in these systems. You see the beginning of these things happening with the rollout of Apple. So I think that, Apple has rolled out an AI device now, but it doesn't have everything in it. So a lot of those features, I think, will roll out over a period of time. They're calling it AI as a federated network service. It may even make a lot of AI, I hate to say it this way, but more of a commodity.
And also what is mentioned is the very low latency in
Yes.
the transfer of data. So
Right.
to me, this sounds like it's not only that we can do everything we do today only 100 times faster, but it opens up whole new possibilities.
Yes. Yes. I think you can think of it this way, and I'll give you an example. With the built-in AI, every time you go into a wireless communication with built-in AI, if something happens that morning, the data for that will be immediately almost incorporated in updated information. So it's life in real time. All right. And of course, this creates some exciting information. It also creates some real challenges, right? Because the information accuracy of anything is only limited to the last update. And so think of it as a real-time updating system that if I did a statistical analysis today on something, theoretically, 15 minutes later, it could be obsolete.
Mm-hmm. Could you give us an example of what would be a typical application that could be of impact, of use to industries?
Well, yeah. I mean, for example, the data that would be available to transfer operations from one location to another will become even more dynamic. And what are those, for example? Then there could be actual geographic issues that are coming up. Or I'll give you an example. I traveled to Dallas, Texas yesterday or Monday evening. Getting on the plane, we're ready to go, and then there's an outage and at the airport. And I sit on the airport for 2.5 hours. All right. Now, if you were to get an update, none of that showed up on the recordings that Newark was having an outage. That information would be available much quicker, more dynamically. So in the areas, for example, of no single point of failure in manufacturing, okay, where you may be using multiple cloud areas or multiple distribution centers, maybe there is a catastrophic event or a possibility of it, a weather condition that's going on, something goes wrong with a factory, there's an explosion. I mean, all of these things would be available almost immediately. All right.
Yeah.
And with advanced software, one can then shift from a service delivery point of view, right? I mean, supply chain in manufacturing is extremely important, right? And as we know, weather conditions, natural disasters, other kinds of things, with advanced IoT devices and availability of data and the crunchability, one can be monitoring things on a real-time basis to maximize the performance and delivery of goods and services. I mean, that's one of those. The other one, I think, is healthcare and medicine, right? I mean, new procedures that are going on, breakthroughs, information about new types of things. We know that generative AI will create new data, which means as it is looking and observing things, there could be an immediacy in possibilities. All right. Now, the controlling of how the medical industries want to do that and work with it, but that is something else. And certainly transportation. You know, I think we all can effectively say is that traveling these days is not fun. And whether or not you're on a train or you're in a car or you're certainly in an airplane, even the latency in the information in your directionalities is not great these days because things can happen much faster. You get in your car and it says you should be in this place in 25 minutes. And then halfway through, things happen that had a latency problem. And it makes a huge difference to you. So I think it's a world of dynamic connectivities of which we will just be more accurate and more predictive, all right, in how we manage the supply and movement of everything.
Yeah. Okay. So, but what I understood from your, even from your introduction was like, okay, there are big opportunities to maybe get my production much quicker, to make everything connected much more and to raise efficiency. But at the same time, it sounds like it's a huge challenge to handle all this data. For example, as you said, how would I run an analysis if the result of the analysis might change every second or a few minutes? How do you handle this as an IT manager? Or
it's an adaptability, but what I can specifically, and we're seeing this now, all right, because it's affecting life. You know, when we look at digital disruption, we know that the digital side is developing exponentially. However, unfortunately, our social, our political, our economic systems are only digesting it in an incremental way. So do the math. All right. I mean, it's just mathematics, right? The gap is becoming extraordinarily wide. And that gets us into a whole other question, Nicholas, which is, do we have a society that is capable of digesting it? And the answer right now is we are very much struggling. All right. We see what's happening to the social media campaigns of politics, government, what is legal, what isn't. How will countries mediate this type of thing? And yet it's like a Pandora's box, right? The data is out there. And then of course the need for better computing. And I can tell you now, the biggest problem is we're feeling the results of poor investment by companies in the technology itself. And, you know, I was at a conference yesterday and I was with some colleagues from the Wharton School, and they made a statement which is so true. Unless it's going to save them money, they don't want to invest in it. And now the question becomes, how quick do they want the ROI? So if you look at the Amazons and other digital firms, their ROI is, you know, it's a hockey stick. It's much broader out. So I think we're seeing an incredible pressure on our infrastructures and our systems and the way we do business to react. The other thing, which I think is finally you're going to see over the next 5 years, is selectivity on where you want to live. All right. And cities competing with each other. We've always used this term smart cities, but we haven't really got it, right? But now you're really going to see, I mean, I don't need to live in the city I work. All right. So I'll sit there and say, well, where do I want to go? And do I want to be in a city that is digitized and easy to get around and easy to get goods and services and has a lower cost? The answer is yes. So think of a world where we may even end up with naked cities if they're not investing in infrastructural capabilities.
Yeah. So when we focus on maybe the world of a single CIO IT leader, for a moment, I mean, regarding what you say, it's obvious to me that before talking to management to raise like some more efficiencies and all that by using AI in a 6G world would be have a look if my infrastructure 6G ready, right? And to handle all this.
Yes, and we have to get better at the return on investment because some of these technologies. I'll put it to you this way: if you've ever watched, one of these long meter runs in the Olympic Games or whatever, and this is the advice that we're giving people and companies, you have 3 kinds of runners, right? You got the runner that's up front and creating the pace. And then you've got some really poor performers that are way behind. And no matter how good their kick is, they're probably so far behind that they can't do it. And then you got a lot of people in the middle of the pack. And the idea is that at the right moment, if they put on a big kick, they can win the race. And I think that what we're advising a lot of companies, you may not want to be out there in the front of the group with where all the risks are, but you certainly don't want to be so far behind the pack that it's going to be difficult for you to catch up. So you've got to be somewhere in the middle of the pack where you're in striking range, where if some of these technologies really take off, all right, you're going to need to put the kick in.
And do you also think that like it will be of much bigger advantage to huge companies who already have a lot of data and who also are more easy in raising the money to invest in their infrastructure, and the smaller ones will be the losers in this game, in this race?
Well, very much so, possibly, although I think we're living in the world of private equity, all right? And we're going to see that, I mean, GE, with all of its power, with all of its money, almost went out of business on the digital, GE Digital. And you have Siemens, in Germany, for example, which is a direct competitor. They're doing much better. But even they had to go get private equity investment. I think you need partners. But even small ideas on the entrepreneurial side, I think those companies are going to be very effective and they can grow very quickly and be absorbed in many different ways. But there's definitely an M&A activity that is going on, joining forces, reinventing themselves. General Motors calling itself a company of human movement, as opposed to a car company. And is a car nothing more than a IoT device with wheels? So you begin to see a rebalancing of lots of things and very much a globally competitive market. Germany's got problems right now, right, with what's going on with Volkswagen, with the Chinese. All right. And I don't know how up to date you are or knowledgeable of Gaia X, which, of course, has evolved from France and Germany. which is standards and sharing of the data. So we're now getting to the point where maybe the data doesn't have to be so guarded. Maybe it's not so much about the value of the data, but how you use it.
Yeah.
I remember a commercial, Nicholas, from Mercedes-Benz many, many, many years ago. And the commercial started where they said, Mercedes-Benz has 20 inventions, all right, IP, of things they've done in cars. And they've given them all away because certain things are too important. You understand what's happening is it's not necessarily owning things, but much of the data doesn't need to be that protected. And if shared, companies may end up doing better. Remember that Uber, with all its problems, took a smartphone, it took a satellite, and it took Google Maps, and it's changed the world. It has changed the world on travel, and it doesn't own any of it. It doesn't own any
sure. Yeah.
So Gaia X movement, all right, is about, and I'm working with independent board members of Gaia X, which has a lot of support behind it, including Germany, in terms that maybe there's an awful lot of this data can just be thrown together, verified, and save a lot of companies a lot of money. And the competitive aspect won't be the data, but how we use it, our strategies.
Yeah.
So another thing to think about.
Okay. So to maybe wrap it up, on the one side, you see huge possibilities, new things coming up, AI as a real-time commodity. On the challenge side, you see, okay, if your infrastructure is not ready for it, you maybe will not be the one to eat, but to be eaten. Yeah. So, what would be kind of your call to action to CIOs now? I mean, it's still like some years ago, away, but how to start now, what to do?
Well, the word that I would use is the smart CIOs, and I've been advocating this for quite some time and have written about it. It is time to rebrand yourself. All right. Do you really want to be called a chief information officer? Or do you want to be an executive of technology? All right. How does one build on the strategic side of the job? All right. Now you still got to keep the lights on. Let's not, so I have this theory called driver supporter theory, where most CIOs are doing a pretty good job on the support side, right? Because they're sort of conditioned. Right. And that's important. I'm not saying it's not important. It's real important. Because if the lights go off, we got a problem. But the other side of what boards are looking for right now is, where do I take this? Where do I go with it? What are my risk factors? Now, if you're a traditional CIO, you don't even like the word risk. You don't even want to have a conversation about risk, because your world is, let's get rid of the risk. But if you're in the front side, it's like saying a salesperson goes out to sell you something, not going to make every sale. So what we're seeing is, how does one articulate in front of boards and others the need for a different investment model when it comes to technology? Now, we've seen some of this fail fast, and you got to have more, if you're playing basketball, you don't make every shot. So what's your average, right? Yeah. So how aggressive do you want to be? And do you want to be in the forefront? Do you want to be in the middle of the pack? You certainly don't want to be all at the end. I have seen a lot, in the CIO move group, a lot of the manufacturing thing. I don't understand why AI is a factor. Well, maybe it's going to be robotics and other kinds of things. And these are challenges on society. It's challenges on how people get paid and economies. The rules are changing. And another huge one. And by the way, this is very important. This is what I call a pillow item, Nicholas. Put it under your pillow tonight. Never forget it. There's a dramatic change in the strategy of warfare.
Das war mein Gespräch mit Art Lenger. Wenn es Fragen oder Anmerkungen gibt, gerne eine Mail schicken an post@cioradio.de und natürlich bald wieder einschalten zur nächsten Episode vom CIO Radio. Danke fürs Zuhören und für heute. Ciao.
Vielen Dank fürs Zuhören. Mehr Informationen zu diesem Podcast finden Sie unter cioradio.de.